Welcome to the show. We're back. Another week, another movie, another review. How's it going?
Pretty fantastic. Had to open the back door and scream at the dogs. They were trying to eat each other, but other than that, it's doing pretty good.
We are going to be discussing the film Hush. Came out in 2016. There are actually other films called Hush, so that's why I'm specifying that this one came out in 2016.
Talking about which one, because
Yeah. This was exclusive, or I don't know if I would say it's exclusive. You might be able to buy it on DVD or something, but it was released on Netflix, and it was directed by, I have his name written
I think it's
down.
Mike Flanagan.
Mike Flanagan. You are correct. He also co-wrote it with the star of the film, Kate Siegel. I think I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah, and that's his wife too.
That is his wife.
Now.
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
if
So
they were
you
married
said
at
you,
the time.
yeah. I'm not sure if they were, but
Because
he's
it said they got
done.
married in 2016, so
Okay, when that's when this
it
came.
came out in 2016, so they probably got married right afterwards. I'm sure.
Yeah, they definitely knew each other. And were close at that time. But he's done things like Gerald's Game, The Haunting of Hill House, Doctor Sleep, big feature he did recently. So he's a guy that knows horror. And as normal, we're gonna just say how we feel about the film, spoiler free right now, and then we'll jump into full spoilers. Welcome to the channel. If you're new, this is Pulpmythos. I'm Brian, and I'm here with Spencer. We put these videos up every week. They are film reviews, and as soon as Perry Mason starts, we'll be doing that on Sunday evenings. So
They're doing a remake of Kojak too, right? And
they might actually. I'd watch that. We could
get Betty White to do it until she dies.
Hell yeah. So what is your the reason we chose this film? This was your recommendation. Is something you had seen. I'd never seen it before. I hadn't even heard of it before. What is your spoiler-free thoughts? Oh, actually, before we do that, let me just give you the IMDb rundown so you know what the film is. It's basically a slasher film. It's considered. Let me see. Did I put that in here? No, I think they said it was like a thriller or horror or some shit like that. But it's rated R. Clocks, here, horror thriller. There you go. It's a slasher film. Clocks in at an hour and 22 minutes. It's rated R for strong violence, terror, and some language. The premise is a deaf and mute writer who retreated into the woods to live a solitary life must fight for her life in silence, when a masked killer appears at her window. And that literally is exactly the plot. That summarizes it very well. So, what are your views on the film, spoiler free?
I think that if you would picture what Evil Dead would be without all the hokiness, to me it had a similar kind of setup, and not necessarily vibe, because it's more of to me it's a slasher film, but it's done so well that I wouldn't even qualify it as that. I don't know, because I think of like Jason, or one of those movies, or even like any of the Halloweens with Michael Myers. This didn't feel that same way. Those relied a lot on like jump scares and music and stuff, and this, I mean, they just said that she's deaf and mute. That's not like a spoiler. But so a lot of it wasn't jump scares. It was some music, but it wasn't music setting the tone. So to me, how they shot this was so well done, because of those things. But I also think the budget. That's why I'm kind of comparing to Evil Dead. It's literally shot at like one house. The whole movie is shot at one house in the surrounding little wooded area. So to make use of the space that they have within that house, still be able to provide an atmosphere and setting, I think it. And I suggested it not because Hereditary, I didn't know anything about it. I just read online that it's one of those movies that flew under the radar. What flew under the radar because it was shit. But this one, I had watched when I saw it come on Netflix, because I had watched The Haunting of Hill House and it was in my suggested thing. So I was like, oh, I'll watch it. and I was very impressed. Like, I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, yeah. I as I said, had never even heard of it, and checked it out, and yeah, I loved it. I would highly recommend this if you're into the slasher genre at all. It reminded me a lot of. There was a period in the early 2000s, and I can't remember any. I'm gonna have to look up these film titles. There was a period in the early 2000s where this was
Scary movie.
pre-streaming. It was before streaming was really a thing, and so a lot of direct-to-video horror films were being. If you wanted to know about them, you would have to buy the magazines like Fangoria or stuff, or go on horror websites. And so there were a lot of really good horror movies in the early 2000s that did not get theatrical releases, and I used to read about them in magazines. I'd pre-order them and at like Amazon.com and local stores and buy them. But this reminded me of one of those movies where didn't know anything about it, did not was not a theatrical film, and yet it was solid. It was the kind of movie that you watch and you're like, wow, that was a good time. Very simple premise, does not feel the need to go into detail on certain things. It tells a very simple story and does it very efficiently. And what I mean by not going into detail, it it doesn't feel the need to explain everything, and we'll go into that in the spoiler section of this. And I appreciated it because it gives you just what you need, and you can sort of fill in the blanks if you want. And every moment of screen time was spent telling the story, pushing it forward. I never got bored at it. Perfect length for this kind of film, an hour and 22 minutes. I wish more films would adopt an hour and 20-minute length. So yeah, highly recommended from me. So I guess we can jump into the spoilers now.
I was going to say, clearly, I did recommend it. Like, it was, but it wasn't a. It was me recommending it because I'd seen it and I quite enjoyed it. But yes, I would give it a thumbs up or whatever process we're going with. 9 stars out of 32. Like, I don't know. Whatever it is.
Five slinky dogs.
Four out of 4 corn dogs.
I don't know why I said slinky dog. I saw a thing on the Toy Story Land roller coaster this morning on YouTube. There you go. So, all right, we're gonna jump into the spoiler stuff. So, yeah, we both recommend it. Check it out. Doesn't hour and 20 minutes. Good horror film. Nice. Gets a little bloody at points and tells a full story. So here we go into the spoilers. So the movie opens up with the typical, film studio logos for, this film. There's 2. It's Blumhouse Productions and Intrepid Pictures. And they do a unique thing by not having any sound. It's completely silent in that introduction. Which I thought was a cool idea because the beginning of the movie is introducing us to the lead character named Maddie, who is deaf. And so you have those logos come on. It's completely quiet. Then a really cool shot up high above the trees. It comes down. You're hearing all the nature sounds. Maddie's cooking a meal. Great sound design. They're letting you hear every little sound that's happening in the kitchen. And then slowly, as the camera pans into Maddie, we all of a sudden shift the audio shifts to her POV, which is she can't hear anything. She's deaf.
I thought that was, and like I said, I've watched it 3 times now, and I pointed out the how it was real quiet leading up to it, and how, because I had to look to see if Blumhouse did anything, because some of the different intros are all different. Like, the MGM one's a giant lion roaring. So I was like, well, I had to think back to other Blumhouse movies, which I've watched a bunch of them. But I was like, is it quiet during that time? I was like, I don't know. So I looked it up on YouTube while I paused it real quick. And I was like, it does have an intro with noise. And I was like, the Intrepid Picture, same thing. And I was Like, I didn't notice that the first couple times I watched it. So then I brought it up to you just in case maybe it was my TV or something. Like, I didn't know. But I thought it was really an interesting way to do that. And I thought it was really cool.
Yeah. Within, I think it's 2 or 3 minutes, we're told everything we really need to know about the character. As soon as this sequence ends, a friend or a neighbor comes over, Sarah. She's holding a book and she's very excited about it. She starts signing to Maddie. So we've established that Maddie is deaf and mute. Um, she lives in the woods. She has a neighbor named Sarah who talks about her boyfriend, John. I think it's John. I have it written down here. Hold on. Yes,
I'm pretty
John.
sure it was
It
John.
is John. We learned that Maddie is an author and that she lost her hearing at the age of 13. We're also, I mean, it dumps all this information in a very short
I
amount
think
of
it
time.
was, well, they show it too. Like, they
Yeah,
show,
yeah,
like,
absolutely.
on her book jacket or whatever. I think it was
Exactly.
from bacterial meningitis, they said.
Yes. So we establish all of this. We even have a nice little moment where they're discussing her writing process. Sarah is very impressed with how Maddie is able to tell a story and have surprising endings, and she basically lays out that you know she comes up with multiple scenarios. She hears a voice in her mind, and then Sarah goes on to say basically, well, what does the voice sound like? She says it sounds like her mother. And then we have the alarm go off, which sets up something as foreshadowing something that happens at the end of the film. Her, because she's deaf, her fire alarm has to be so loud that it sort of vibrates everything around it because she has to be able to feel it, and it blinks really bright because so she
To
can
me,
see
that's
it.
crazy. Like, the visual part of it, I got, but to have the foresight to be like, it's got to be so loud that it actually hurts.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought that was a cool little addition.
So all of this transpires literally in like 5 or 6 minutes, and then they have their little meal, and then this I was a little fuzzy on. I don't know if I was paying attention properly. Basically, was Craig supposed to come over?
No, and this was the thing. Like, when I first watched it, I thought that that was Craig, the guy in the mask.
Oh, okay. No, no.
And I think that's what they were trying to make you think at first. But
Well,
but then I was looking at his face and I was like, no,
yeah,
it looks like a black dude, and the
yeah,
dude in the
yeah.
mask, the white guy. So I'm like, well, no, it's not him. So, but I think that that's her ex-boyfriend, and that's one of the reasons she came out of the city,
Yes,
because
yeah,
they talk about her no longer living in the city. Her sister tries to get her to come back. She's worried about her living out in the boonies by herself. But I think that they broke up because that first text that she got from Craig was like, I was thinking about you or whatever. And then I think she was giving in like, well, I kind of miss him too. And then she immediately was like, no, abort, abort. So
yeah.
it
She
was,
does it like twice, and
yeah.
then he ends up trying to contact her. Yeah, they do say that. Yeah, they broke up like a year ago, and that I guess she still has feelings or whatever. The only thing that was confusing to me is why she was going through all this trouble to make this meal, and then she sort of seemed bummed out at the end of the meal. So that's where I was getting confused as to, was she expecting another guest,
I
or was
think
she
she was
just
expecting,
disappointed?
I think she was expecting maybe John and Sarah, the neighbors,
Yeah.
because she showed up like while she's cooking. And then that's why, like, when they were talking, the Sarah mentioned, hey, since you don't have anything to eat here now because you fucked up and burned your whole meal, do you want to just come over and eat with us? So I think initially it was the opposite. I think she
That's
was
right.
cooking for them.
That's right. Because yeah, you're right. Because after the fire alarm went off, she did invite her to come over to their house. Yeah, that's because the Craig thing. That's I guess basically to explain why she lives in the woods, and I guess that's what that setup was because it never really comes up again. Um,
Well, I think it's also to kind of make you think that maybe it's him
mhm.
in the
Gets
woods. He's jaded, but like I said, that's dispelled pretty quickly. So
yeah. So then, So that's, I believe, about 20 minutes into the film, and then the movie, then it turns into a horror film. So basically, Maddie is cleaning the kitchen, and we get a brutal murder sequence of Sarah being murdered by this masked guy in front of the window. As Maddie can't hear it. She's standing there. She doesn't see it. She never turns in that direction properly. She doesn't hear it, and her friend is being brutally killed. Uh, so we're like, oh shit, we have a killer. He's killing, and then he realizes that she didn't hear it, and this leads to the rest of the film, basically. He
I
appears. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was thinking too, like cinematically, for a film with such a low budget, for it to be filmed in front of a window, a lot of times, and I've heard, directors talk about this, how it's hard because, you basically get a reflection back of the
Yes.
cameraman and it's hard to do. But for a film that seemed very, for such a low budget, it was done so well. I didn't see that. Like, it wasn't
Windows
like,
everywhere.
they weren't doing like
Yeah.
goofy angles to try and cut down on the fact that they could see him. Like, it was just, I don't know if that was edited that way or if it was just something that they did, or maybe they put something on the other side of the glass so that you could only see through part. Like, I don't know, but it was, you didn't notice that. And to me, to kind of give the character a little more sense of realism, the angle at which Maddie was standing, because everybody has peripheral vision. Mine's, I've had a shit ton of head injuries from rugby and diabetes and everything else, but like my peripheral vision isn't that good. But I did like a test on myself. I was, standing in the kitchen looking one way and seeing if I could see like the kitchen table. Like, I was trying to see how the hell she didn't see them, but I couldn't see it. So I was like, damn. Like, it was, to me, it was very, like, they did research on shit. Like, they didn't put it in a situation where they were putting themselves with plot holes. I thought that it felt real, which I don't know,
Yeah.
which in this kind of movie is important, I think.
There was really nothing in the. I'm trying to think. There was really nothing in the movie that was unbelievable. I think if there was one scene that I would say that's a little unbelievable, it would be and we'll get to it later. She sustains a certain injury towards the end that, I mean, I don't know. I would be unconscious and in shock.
Oh God, yeah.
There's no way in hell I'm fun. I don't think. I mean, maybe adrenaline pumping, but my God, I would be done by that point. But I think the point of the movie was that was a point where she had truly hit that fight or flight mode, and she had, fight was the choice she made. But my God, I would have been done at that particular point. We'll get there in a few minutes. So the tension starts building. There's a killer outside. Sarah's dead. Maddie has no idea what's going on. She's writing her book. She's trying to figure out what ending to go with. She has multiple endings. And then she starts receiving texts from her phone on her computer.
Yeah, which I
Oh,
thought was cool too, because you
great
can do that
scene.
with
Yeah.
Apple. Like, you sign in with your Apple account on a Mac computer, and you can sync up text messaging. My dad used to do it to me all the time. He would text me, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I'm sitting at the computer grading papers or whatever." And
Yeah. Great.
I thought you can do that. So for her to start getting text messages from her own phone pop up on her computer, I thought that was not necessarily just a nod to Apple, but it was a really kind of cool feature that they used, knowing that Apple does that. Like,
And the pictures are of her moments, before, and she gets the realizing, oh my God, somebody has my phone. They're stalking me. What's going on? And then where the killer then basically approaches the window, she sees him, and there's that fear. But then she pulls out some lipstick and writes a message on the window, basically saying, "Look, no harm, no foul. I never saw your face. Go away, and we're good." I'll
well, when we
say,
talk about things that aren't believable, the only thing that I thought was unbelievable is how good her handwriting was backwards. That's if we're going to nitpick about something, because I try to write shit backwards, and it is like me trying to write left-handed. It's bad. but hers was
Yeah.
very block letter and very legible. But I thought that was a cool thing. She can't talk and tell him, "Hey, I didn't, you know, see you. I never saw your face." But like you said, it just like a little note she wrote on there and was shining a flashlight on it.
He he's wearing a mask which is sort of just white and has no real features. He has a big tattoo on his neck. He has a crossbow and a knife. That's basically his arsenal. Once
Good
he sees,
skills.
yeah, once he sees the message, he takes his mask off, and that's the moment. I think, as the viewer, that you realize he enjoys doing this. He enjoys killing, and to him, this is sort of fun. The fact that she's deaf, and he can turn it into sort of a game, and that's exactly what the rest of the film is. He turns it into a game.
I think there's a lot of movies that part reminded me of, like Funny Games.
Yeah.
How it's, I like that movie too. I like the remake too because
Mm.
talking to the camera and everything. But I thought that was a very good way because if you look up IMDb, his name just says the man. Like he's not.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
not a named character. He never reveals who he is. I think it was a smart way to set up a villain without him needing a backstory, without you know needing to go into details about who he is, why he's doing it. They just established he likes it, and this is what he's doing.
The first glimmer of hope for Maddie is she remembers that Sarah had her cell phone in her back pocket. So there's a scene where he starts terrorizing Maddie with Sarah's dead body. So she sees that
That
she's dead
was hilarious.
when he's
I
tapping
thought
her
that was
hand on the
brilliant.
window. Yeah, she sees the shadow of it and looks, and she sees her dead. She has a little breakdown, but then she starts remembering, oh, she has a phone on her. So how can I distract him so that I can get access to that phone? And which she turns her car alarm on, which works, but turns out he was smart enough to know to take the cell phone out of her pocket. But this leads to his first injury, and the first sort of injury of the film, besides Sarah's bloody death, where she takes the back of a hammer and stabs it right through his arm, which begins the escalation of events.
That's a I've never put the claw end of a claw hammer in
Yeah.
myself anywhere. My uncle did one time. He hit a tire and stuck it in his head, but like
Ooh.
he hit a tire and it bounced off the tire and stuck himself in the forehead. He was like, I think he was like 16 or something. But I think that, like you said, it's something that didn't really hinder him because of where it hit him.
Yeah.
It was more of a cut wound instead of a broken wound. Like, because to me, the rest of the film, because he has a crossbow, and that injury caused him to have difficulty reloading the crossbow.
Yeah.
Not a lot, but some. But if she would have hit him with the head end of the hammer and like broke his arm, to me, it would have been less believable for him to be able to reload that crossbow. But like I said, that's why this movie, I enjoyed it so much because there wasn't a lot of plot holes. It wasn't just like, oh, that's not believable. I thought it was a very believable way of telling this kind of story.
She ends up going outside at one point after this, and they're doing the whole cat and mouse thing. But then she finally, which I would have done first, she goes up to the top of the house and she climbs out on the roof, and she comes up with a plan. I guess she's trying to escape. So she flings a flashlight into the woods. He falls for it initially, but he he's smart enough to realize what she was doing. So by time she gets to the point where she's going to scale the house, he's there and he shoots her with a crossbow, and she sustains her first major injury, crossbow bolt to the leg. Now this is where he screws up. He climbs up, he shoots again, and I don't think he was sure whether or not he hit her, because that's when he climbs the house and she pushes his ass off the roof and takes his crossbow, which was funny. And she's able to get into the house. He's very pissed at this point. Um, what were you? What would you think she was trying to do during that whole sequence? My only guess was I didn't know if she was going to try and hang out on the rooftop or if she was.
Well, I think that she knew, like, if John and Sarah were supposed to be coming over, I think she was trying to get to John at that point. So I don't think that she was trying to make it to any point where she was, I don't know, escaping to the next town over on foot. I think that she was trying to distract him long enough to basically just get away. There is a part during that point that I like to point out too, is that she's trying to be quiet, but she's not, which I thought was kind of cool too, that she has no bearing on whether or not she's walking quietly. There's a bunch of dead leaves everywhere, and like you can hear her, which also leads me to believe that he heard her, and that's what brought him back, not the fact that he was tricked or the fact that he was like investigated it and was like, oh, it's not there. I think that the reason he turned around and came back and shot her was because he could hear the leaves. Like, she's trying to be quiet, but she has no idea whether or not she's being quiet. So I think that he heard her, and that's what turned him around. But
Yeah,
like you said, I think that
it was interesting. There were, yeah, I think he thought he hit her with the second one because the way he went up, the way he walked up there or climbed up there without any kind of defensive posture. Like, he just, you know what I mean? Like, at first I thought she was going to take I thought she was going to take the bolt and stab him with it. I wasn't sure what exactly was going to happen there. I did not think she was going to get the crossbow. So after this sequence, we have our typical. It reminded me of like Predator or any movie where, or even Die Hard, where the hero is wounded and they have to treat their wound, and so she's in a bathroom and showing the wound in her leg, and then she discovers on his crossbow notches, as if he's keeping count of his kills, which is what I'm assuming the audience is meant to think.
Yeah.
I think it was like 12 or something. I can't remember how many was on there.
I don't ever remember counting. I've seen it a couple times now, and I didn't notice that until the second time I watched it. And then this time I didn't remember that happened, so I didn't look for it.
Now for one of the more frustrating sequences in the movie, as far as very horror film tropey, not in a bad way because it worked. I like the way it plays out, but when John does show up, and John, Sarah's boyfriend, and John is trying to figure out what's going on, the killer poses as a cop or a detective or whatever, and for a second, John seems to think that is the case, but he quickly starts to figure everything out. A lot of clues lying around, and he figures out, okay, this is the bad guy, and I need to take him out. And during this whole time, we're cutting back to Maddie trying to load the crossbow. That was irritating me that she couldn't load the crossbow. I was like, damn, man. I know it's hard, but shit.
Well, I think part of that
got to do some push-ups, man.
Well, I think part of that too is, I mean, I've been in situations where, like, you're scared, and and I'm a big guy. Like, I'm a really big guy, but it goes one of two ways. You either freak out and you almost like freeze where you can't do anything, or you become like Hulk. So I think that it was showing that she wasn't getting stronger. She was shutting down. Like, she wasn't able to function. To me, it showed that a couple more times throughout the movie where she was almost like paralyzed with fear.
Yeah. Yeah. The only
get over it, but couldn't.
Yeah, the only reason it sort of, for a second, I was just like questioning it was because looking at her and the killer, I didn't see a huge difference in build. You know what I mean, as far as potential strength. And I was like, yeah, she's got to be damn near as strong as him. The fact that he's reloading it constantly, but that was my thinking. And then we have. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm thinking of. Have you ever tried to load a crossbow like that?
Yes.
Is
No, it's
hard
not
as shit.
easy. It's not
The
easy.
way
Yeah,
she
yeah.
was doing it too, she's basically using all arms because she was
True.
sitting on the ground trying to. Every time he reloaded it, he was standing over top of it. That way, you're using your back, your lower back, your legs, and everything instead of just your biceps. The way she was doing it, she's using one muscle group, whereas even if he is smaller than her, he's using multiple muscle groups, which makes it easier to do.
Plus,
Which
she
I
could have
thought,
cushioned her hands. If she had like a towel, she could have cushioned her hands and got a
yeah.
better pull on it.
Or like I said, if she would have stood up.
Yeah. Um. So John, as I said, is aware of, he's working things out, and this was the most. This was sort of the more tropey, like, okay, this is a horror film thing. He's about to bash the killer over the head with a rock, but at this exact moment in time, Maddie taps on the window, distracting John, and the killer stabs him in the throat. And I think this is a great scene if you're watching it with a crowd, because everybody's going to start cussing and be like, ah, because it's that kind of scene. So I know exactly why it's in the movie. It's the one, to frustrate the audience. It's on purpose. It's supposed to do that. But
However, I think that although yes, that is a tropey thing, it's kind of a tie back to all those kind of movies. However, like if I was sitting near that window, I could hear their conversation. I could be like, "Oh, he's getting ready to do X, Y, Z." I could hear the conversation leading up to that and realize what John was doing. She had no idea that he even knew that she was alive. She had no idea that he even figured that part out. So I think that to me, her not being able to hear plays into that decision as well. Which, I mean, in all the scary movies, when they do it, there's an explanation. The explanation is normally bullshit, but there normally is an explanation as to why it happened. But this one, I felt, even though it was very tropey, was very horror movie esque. To me, this is one of the few times where it made sense that it happened and how it happened.
yeah, yeah. Um, the next scene is Maddie escaping the house. The killer. Oh, I forgot to say John. So John is stabbed in the throat, but he still has a little fight in him, and he's trying to hold the killer down and basically telling her run. Using his last bit of energy before he dies to help Maddie escape. We then see Maddie escape. The killer grabs her and he beats her to death with a rock, which then immediately we're shown that is not what happened. That was all playing out in her mind. Now, initially, when I saw this scene, it annoyed me, because I was thinking, the whole fake out. I don't like fake out stuff like that. But then it led to a very important scene, which kicks off the third act of the film. The conclusion, which was her writer's brain. We're told early in the film that the way she thinks and the way she um, structures her stories, she's constantly thinking of every possible scenario, every possible ending. So much so that her current book, she has 7 different endings. She's not sure which one to go with. So she starts running through in a really cool, well shot scene, well edited, of her running through every possible scenario of what should she do? Should she hide? Should she try and run? What should she do? And then she comes to her conclusion. And then I'll ask you what you thought about that scene. Her simple conclusion is, I lose in all those scenarios. The only one I have a chance in is if I try and kill him. And she literally, I have to kill him. That's the conclusion she comes to. Now, she still assumes she's not going to live, but she thinks that's her best um, chance, her best scenario. So, what did you think of that entire sequence?
I I thought that it was very well done, actually, because the way it was set up, they showed, like you said, it showed the fact that she was going through her writing process. They made a reference to it earlier where I think it said 7. It was 6 or 7, where it had like the tabs, where she had that many
Yes,
different
I think
endings.
it was 7. I think.
But I think, like you said, the tie off was her basically talking to herself. I think had they just not, if they would have just done the one thing and been like, oh, well, she was just going through her head, the fact that they showed multiple ways, like she was, talking to herself, and then it showed her sitting on the other side of her talking to herself again. Like it was a bunch of different sequences and scenes that showed what she was doing and why. I enjoyed it because to me, in scary movies, they're always trying to process something. They're always trying to show, justify why they're doing what they did. But just like the scene that we talked about a moment ago, this movie does a very good job of not leaving loopholes, and it explains itself without over having to explain itself.
Yeah, I love the fact that you set up early in the film her writing style, and now we get to visualize it with her. I thought, yeah, I thought it was clever. I thought it was very clever. The way it played out. Now we're going to get to the part. If I had one thing, that the unbelievable part of the movie, the only part of the movie where I'm like, I don't know how possible that would be, but okay. So she comes to the conclusion, I gotta kill him. The killer then finds her cat, and he's about to kill the cat, and I guess he's gonna parade the body around to mess with her. Well, she figured out how to load the damn crossbow, and she shoots his ass with the crossbow. So he runs to the door. She goes through the door. She falls. She reaches out to grab the crossbow arrow, and he slams the door into her arm, her hand being exposed on his side, and he proceeds to stomp the shit out of her hand. Really good effects, by the way.
Oh yeah, like not
Crushes
just
her
one time. Like he
fingers.
like
Oh,
soccer kicked it and then like stomped on it.
crushes her fingers. They're snapped and broken in all different directions. I mean, he just stomps the shit out of her hand. She pulls it back, closes the door, locks it, and at this point, I think he could have probably forced himself in, but I think he purposefully didn't because he was enjoying her suffering. So she's on the ground, just in agony. I don't know of any scenario where I wouldn't have passed out during this. I mean, oh my,
Well,
when you, oh
I can say they're like, now obviously it didn't get crushed like that or kicked like that. I was at a rugby tournament where a guy had the bone sticking out of his finger. He walked to the sideline and tried to get a medic to tape it, and they're like, dude, we're not going to tape that. We have to take you now. The bone's exposed. And he's like, all right, well, I'll just do it myself. And he pulled the finger to where the bone was slightly less sticking out, and then he just taped it and kept playing. So
yeah, there you go.
I mean, there's a different amount of adrenaline between playing a game of rugby and, trying to keep yourself alive. And I imagine that trying to keep yourself alive, it's a lot higher even. But so I
Yeah,
think,
yeah. Go
I mean,
ahead.
she could, like, but like you said, how bad would that have fucking hurt? God.
I because in the movie, I think the story is trying to tell it. Like I said, the fight or flight, and at this point in the movie, she's committed to the fight, and her adrenaline's pumping, and in her mind, she's decided, I'm going to try and kill this guy, and I guess that's what's pushing her through, or at least what the film's telling us. Because the next scene is she casually just sort of stands up, and he's mouthing, something like, I'm going to come in there, and she just fucking puts her finger in her bloody leg hole, pulls out and starts writing on the window, "Do it, coward." So at this point, she's full on like, let's do this. Um,
I love that. I
yeah,
love that
yeah,
she
it
was
was a
talking
great
shit to
scene.
him.
Yeah, the next sequence, pretty much from the next scene all the way to the end credits, I just thought was perfect. I thought from the moment she runs to the laptop, she starts to write a letter to her parents, basically saying, giving a description of him, and then closing it with, I died fighting. Because at this point, she assumes she's probably, she's not going to make it. I died fighting. He's banging the shit out of that window, and he can't get through, which, which made me laugh. Like, he's trying so hard to get through that window, and he can't do it. Which goes back to my whole thought earlier, like I said, but I think between the two of them, strength wise, I don't think there's a massive difference between these two characters. But yeah, and then we get to the bathtub scene. Anything on the that sequence, especially when she's typing on the laptop. I love the I love the music. I love the shot of him banging on the window. I like the whole way that was laid out.
Well, me too. Like you said, the whole part where she's taunting him, being like, "Well, do it then." And then I also think that, you know, I don't know what her character was in her book really, other than I think she said it was like Aaron or something. But I think that that was a very clever thing too, because like you said when we were talking before this, how it's a one-off movie. It doesn't require a sequel, but they set it up to where they could. Um, this could have been the ending that she was looking for her book. You know,
Mm,
so like
yeah,
she could have used this. So her typing it into one of the endings, I thought that was a clever way of being like, this was her ending. Like this is what she felt
yeah,
her ending was.
yes. In a weird way, a lot of this, and I'm sure as they were writing it, that it's yes, it's a slasher film, and it's it's about this Maddie, and she's deaf, and she's going through all this shit, but it's sort of a love letter to writers, like throughout the film. You know what I mean? Like clearly they were trying to say something about the art of writing itself in the
Well,
movie.
yes, and you know, this is one of the only things that she's written, and she wrote it with her probably boyfriend at the time or fiance. I don't know what part of the relationship they were in, but like you said, it's a kind of a nod to that just
Yeah.
in itself, which I thought was very not only well done, but I thought that it was something that I hadn't really seen a lot of.
The remainder of the film, there's only really three scenes. She's in the bathroom, and I love the way it was shot because she's looking at the front door or looking at the bathroom door, expecting him to come through, and you can see in the back, you can see glass sort of falling. So he's smashing a window coming in the bathroom from behind her, which she can't hear. He gets in the bathtub and he's enjoying the moment. He has his knife. She's also holding a knife, but he makes a mistake. He breathes a little too hard. She feels it on the back of her neck, and it gives her just enough time to be able to turn, deflecting his killing blow and landing a stab wound on him. Really cool scene. The way the sound was done on that scene was really good.
Yeah, and like you said, it kind of cut out when it showed them like switching points of view. So her point of view, they switched it to where she can't really hear anything, and I thought that was very cool. And like you said, it looked like it was raining glass behind her, but unless it touched her, she wouldn't know. And then it showed him kind of slowly stepping down into the tub, which I thought was another thing. But he almost like scoffs at her, like, "You dumb bitch." And that bit of arrogance was his undoing, which I thought was also
Yeah.
a very tropey style thing. So the fact that how it how it happened after that, to me was not tropey at all. But that part, like him being arrogant, I mean, it's not really that tropey. That happens to a lot of serial killers. Like they get
Yeah.
too arrogant, and if he's killed 12 people or whatever and hasn't been caught yet, he probably is a little arrogant. So I guess it's not unrealistic to those kind of people, but that does happen a lot in these kind of movies.
She spent the entire film relying solely on her ability to see and feel basically vibrations and things like that. She has no hearing to rely on. So in the end, she sort of flips it on him, and the way she defeats him is by destroying his senses. She sprays him in the eyes with bug spray. She sets off that fire alarm, which deafens him. He can barely see because of the blinking light. She sort of flips the table, as far as uh, his it becoming now he has a disadvantage, and then it ends with, which I thought was cool. There, she uses a wine bottle opener to stab him in the throat to kill him. There's a shot of that wine bottle opener. Is it like the first or second scene of the movie, or at
Yeah, it
the
was
very
pretty
beginning?
early.
Just a weird little setup. for later in the film. Um, and she wins. You know, she defeats him. He's dead. She is able to call the police. She sits on her porch waiting for the police to arrive. Credits roll. The end. Now we talked about how. Well, first, how do you feel about that ending sequence?
Well, we had talked about it off screen how I liked the movie as a whole. And I don't know if this is maybe the styles that we like or what. They didn't they didn't overly explain anything.
No.
But they explained enough to where I didn't have a bunch of questions or I didn't feel like I needed more answers. Same thing with the Black Coat's daughter. There's a lot of stuff that we saw that didn't really need an explanation,
Mm-hmm.
but it was left for us to kind of figure stuff out. Whereas Hereditary was the opposite. Like I felt like they gave us too many things and then didn't explain anything.
Or
So
they the things they did say? Okay, we're going to give you all this info dump. It was dumb as hell.
yeah, it didn't make sense because it didn't tie into what was going on.
Yeah.
This, all the information that they gave us, the little jacket explaining how she became deaf and mute. I thought that was brilliant because it was very quick. It actually stayed up long enough for me to read it. Unlike, Hereditary, which where I was like pausing shit. And they also talked about it later. So there's some things that to me, the information that they gave us was the necessary information, but they didn't overload us with shit that didn't matter. And to me, that was a huge nod to this movie. And
Yes.
the ending sequence, like she sprayed him with that wasp spray, that hot shot spray, which I've used hundreds of times to, sorry, people who like wasps. I don't know if there is anybody, but I've killed lots of them with that stuff. But they, like that is legit what happens. It's like a stream of foam and she hits him right in the face. Like, and it's not, to me, that was a brilliant way to do it because she didn't pepper spray him. Pepper spray like lives in the air. So if she pepper sprayed him when it was that close, she wouldn't have been able to see. Like it would have bothered her too. But what she used was very a localized thing. Like it didn't affect everybody else because it was a very hot shot is just a point and spray. Um, the fire alarm, they did a quick little talk about it. They set it up to where she was able to use that later, and it made sense because all of us have been in a building, whether it's a school, college, work, whatever, where they pull the fire alarm. It is not that disorienting. Like it's loud, but it's not bad. So it took time to show how ridiculously loud and disorienting her fire alarm was for that point, for that part to make sense. So that's why I was talking about like the reason I love this movie is because they don't give you unnecessary information, but the information they do give you, there is a payoff to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It gives you just enough to get by and be entertained. And could you make a sequel? Yeah, of course you could. I mean, I think establishing the notches on the crossbow sets up the idea that this is something he's been doing. Uh, is he doing it alone necessarily? Maybe he's part of a crew. Maybe, um, what's that tattoo about on his neck? You know what I mean? There's little things like that where you could start, you could build on that if you really wanted to, or you'd not. Let it be a
I think the
standalone
tattoo
film,
is
and
just
that's
about.
fine.
I think the tattoo is just about poor choices. Like I don't
Yeah,
think that
very.
it. I don't think that it meant anything. I just think that he made a really poor decision in his life. And
I
I don't know
oh,
that
go ahead.
that's even that might be a poorer decision than killing people. Is that tattoo? But I don't
That's
know.
the that's probably the biggest pain in the ass shooting the movies. He had to put that shit on every day. They had to paint that on or whatever.
Well, like I
Oh,
was talking about with budget wise, I don't know that this took very long to film.
I don't think
Um,
so at all.
you know, it's all one house. They don't have to relocate. They don't have to do stuff. They it was shot in multiple rooms, but it basically was the kitchen, living room, a bathroom, and outside. Like it was not
Hmm.
shot like it was very well done for the amount of locations it had, which to me was brilliant. Like we go back to Evil Dead being one of those iconic horror movies, and partially because of how well Ash was portrayed, but And it's a little over the top and hokey, but this wasn't over the top or anything. To me, it was a director's brilliant way of giving information without giving us too much by changing the scene. Why would her having to run to another person's house and then getting killed there, like, none of that was necessary. So the way they were able to do it on such a shoestring budget, which I have no idea what the budget was, I'll look it up here shortly, but how it was done so well, so cheaply, shows what the formula with Bloomhouse is doing. Because Get Out, what was it, Us, like those movies that are Jordan Peele, so that helps too. But that they are investing on story and not just budget. Like, horror movies normally aren't big budget movies, but these ones particularly are lower and just very well done.
Yeah, it like you said, they to do these kind of films, you rely purely on story and the performances. This is budgeted at $1 million. So there you go.
Yeah, that's about what I was thinking. Like, and because it's Netflix, they didn't have to advertise it. Netflix advertised it for them. So, like, as far as what it cost them, it was next to nothing. Jesus, a movie being made for $1 million now,
it's unheard of.
Nothing.
Yeah. This is a movie that I comfortably would say could have had a theatrical release. Good enough for a theatrical release, and that's what I meant when I was talking about those, a lot of those early 2000 horror films that went direct to video. There was a lot of good movies that came out, but didn't warrant a theatrical release, and this is like that. And that's the great thing about streaming, and there's so many services now between Netflix and Amazon and Hulu and Shudder, dedicated solely to horror. So you get a lot of these films coming out now. So yeah, I thought it was great. Just about done here, I think. Any final thoughts on the movie?
I mean, like I was talking about with the Hereditary, we've watched a ton of really bad movies. Like, me and you have probably, and not just like one or two, like, we purposely watched a bunch of bad movies. And then when we find one that's like a gem, we're like, holy shit, that was really good. And not good because it was bad. Like, it was good just because it was well done. We talked about, even when we talked about this, we talked about how well it was written. There wasn't a lot of plot holes. They, paid respect to the genre without giving into what the genre, kind of traps you into. Like, it's, to me, this movie is what I like in non-religious horror movies. Like, there wasn't any jump scares, which me and you talked about. It wouldn't make sense for there to be jump scares because everything would jump scare her because she can't hear you coming in. She can't, like, so for them to not have to rely on that was, I thought that was my favorite part. I like movies that don't rely on jump scares. And this one not only couldn't, didn't. So yeah. I really, really like this movie.
Yeah, as a slasher film, this is as good as it gets, really. To be honest, this is the kind of movie I'm looking for in that particular genre. Killer, and this is sort of a subgenre. I can't remember what it's called, but the guy's stalking someone in a house in the middle of nowhere. Sort of a subgenre of the slasher genre. I don't remember what it's called, but this is that, and they do a great job. Very much enjoyed it. As I said, we will be putting up another review next Sunday. I think I know what the movie is going to be. We had already discussed it. I'm not going to say it here in case we change our minds. So there will be another review next week.
Legends of the Fall.
It's not going to be that.
Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
whenever Perry Mason does start back, we are going to continue doing movie reviews weekly, but we're going to move the date. It will no longer be on Sundays. So, in the comment section, what day would you prefer these reviews to go up? So, anybody who's listening, um, literally, I don't. Whatever day y'all think is best is the day I'll put it. If somebody comments on this, it'll probably be that date. So there you go. Except Saturday, because I don't want back to back. So Saturday is the only day off the table. Uh, I take that back. I don't mind if it's back to back because Monday I wouldn't mind maybe. No Saturday though. So any day besides Saturday and Sunday. What day do you think would be best for these movie reviews? We are reading the comments. We appreciate them. I saw somebody had a recommendation for a film review. We may do that. It won't be this week, I can tell you that, but maybe in the future. I wrote it down. Um, we'll see. I didn't watch a trailer, but I did look at I guess the poster art or whatever, and it made me laugh. I'll say that. But we are reading that kind of stuff, and we are, considering whenever somebody comments, what they're commenting about. So, thanks for listening. We'll see you next week. And don't forget to subscribe and share this on your social media stuff. Thank you. Bye.